Public Relations. Edward L. Bernays. 1945. Narrated by Skeptical Waves. Part 1. The Growth of Public Relations. 1. Public Relations Today. The term public relations as used in this book has three meanings. 1. Information given to the public. 2. Persuasion directed at the public to modify attitudes and actions. And 3. Efforts to integrate attitudes and actions of an institution with its publics and of publics with that institution. As in the case of every important activity in our complex life, there is a philosophical reason for the existence of public relations, a broad general abstraction, an underlying truth. Public relations is vitally important today because modern social science has found that the adjustment of individuals, groups, and institutions to life is necessary for the well-being of all. The conscious or professional direction of public relations is needed today more than ever. Society has become more complex and its processes have been speeded up over the last few centuries. The rate of progress of the many forces that make up society has been uneven, with consequently increased maladjustment and tension. Because technology has advanced more rapidly than human relations, society has been unable to cope with accelerated technological advances, the atom bomb, for example. There are many reasons for the rise of the new profession of adjustment. Among these are the growing complexity of society, the technical improvement of media, increased education and literacy, accelerated transportation and communication, which have widened the market for ideas and things, the development and acceptance of the social sciences, the substitution of persuasion and suggestion for threat, intimidation, and force, and the extension of the right to vote. Other reasons are the growing movement toward equalitarianism, general support for the concept that private and public interest must coincide, a greater dependence on central government, and dependence of the government on mass support. For public relations, all this means that policies and practices in dealing with the public must be predicated on a joining of the private and the public interest. As long ago as 1934, Harold Lasswell made this distinction in his definition of the Public Relations Council in the Encyclopedia of Social Sciences. The Public Relations Council is no mere errand boy who discharges quantities of mimeographed releases in all directions the moment his client pays him a retainer. He may interact profoundly with the policy determiners of a given enterprise, and extensive effects may result. No detail of operation, communications appeal, market policy, credit practice, is immune from review and criticism by an expert objectively engaged in discovering a profitable sphere of activity for a client. That propagandists have induced important policy changes is well known, but what is unknown is whether the usual effort of those who specialize in assessing currents of public favor and disfavor is to make clear to determiners of business policy the advisability of adopting broad interpretations of self-interest. The highest level of adjustment is reached at the point of enlightened self-interest. The Public Relations Council must ensure that such enlightenment prevails. When self-interest was the dominating factor in most of the causes that sought public interest, press agents and publicity men could follow a function of one-way interpretation to the public. But as times changed and the concept of social responsibility was advanced by group pressure for reform, the field of public relations widened and broadened. It is true that society thus far has developed no legal sanctions to safeguard itself against the uninformed or unethical or anti-social counsel on public relations, only against the man who breaks the law. But the competence of leaders in actual activity in the field defines and validates the term. This is made evident by the position the Council on Public Relations occupies today in the three fields of communication, mass persuasion, and the ability to integrate publics with institutions and institutions with publics his area of competence. By definition and in actuality, he is a practicing social scientist, qualified to give advice to management on policy, to give advice on human relations, and to interpret his clients to the public and the public to his clients. His competence is like that of the industrial engineer, the management engineer, or the investment counselor in their respective fields. Obviously, public relations is not an exact science. But the approach to the problems encountered can be scientific social engineering, the engineering of consent, humanics, human relations, or whatever term we wish to give it. There is, of course, a recognizable goal in public relations activities: goodwill. Goodwill is at once the most tangible and the most intangible asset of people and organizations. Goodwill depends upon the integration of an institution or individual with its publics. It is necessary here to differentiate between publicity and public relations. Publicity is a one-way street, public relations, a two-way street. The modern public relations man owes his being to the destruction of laissez-faire in the early 20th century, he owes it to the muckrakers of that period, the Square Deal, the New Freedom, and the New Deal. Public relations activities are now generally accepted, But unfortunately, as so often happens with any new discipline, their acceptance does not always mean acceptance in their true meaning. This is true, too, of psychiatry and investment counseling. Many capitalize on the interest in a new field without regard to the verities. In our society, the marginal man looking for speedy earnings attempts to capitalize on the good name of others and the ignorance of the public in any new area. In public relations, for instance, men from as varied fields as bookselling to association promoting have tried to turn a quick dollar by cashing in on the interest in public relations. Press agents and printers have called themselves public relations counsels. But then, even after 2,000 years, quacks exist among doctors and shysters among lawyers. Yet both these fields have acquired legal sanctions against abuse. The state has enforced licensing qualifications of education and character for centuries. That some men practice deception rather than truth, use undesirable methods rather than desirable ones, is part of the pattern of the greater society of which all of us are a part. As society improves, so will it make demands upon all men to improve. It has often been recommended that society surround the person who calls himself a public relations counsel with sanctions comparable to those with which it surrounds lawyers and doctors. Even setting up specific requirements will not prevent malefactors from cheating or chiseling as counsel on public relations or under some other name. But certainly it would speed up the elimination of antisocial deviance in the field. A heartening factor is this: every new professional field in the United States has experienced the kind of development public relations is now experiencing. First, there was the need for the specialist. When he made his success, others crowded in. As public knowledge of the field grew, the demand for the competent professional was greater than the supply. Fakers called themselves by the same name. They did not deliver. The public reacted unfavorably to everyone in the field. Then a process of cleaning up took place. The marginal professional was eliminated by economic law or through the voluntary joining together of a number of men in the field to drive him out when excesses became too great. Men set up standards and criteria and tried to enforce them. Public opinion supported them in their activity. Then law sanctioned the criteria and standards that had been set up. This is no novel problem. In my estimation, it applies to the field of counsel on public relations. Government should now step in and apply sanctions that will help this new profession in its high duty and function of integrating society, and thus attempting to make a better world for all of us.